2025. Why gold? And what's taking place? We're now a month and a half into 2025, and seems like the economic focus for those paying attention into finances, gold is starting to hit the news, not so much on a mainstream level, but kind of the undercurrent level, those that kind of focus on what kind of happens within the precious metals market. What is driving gold kind of started with the tariffs and kind of the discussion about what's going to be tariffed, what's going to be hit with things, and suddenly banks are bringing in just incredible amounts of gold into the United States. So why would gold be coming to the United States? So you could say it's getting here in the event tariffs were to come, but is this just a situation where it's really more, maybe there's something more underlying? And so if I kind of look back at what took place after the night of the election, probably within just a few weeks, a movement started to happen within both the gold and the silver industry. And it does seem like the U.S. government is repatriating gold, or at least someone that might be the U.S. government. So is there metal in Fort Knox or not? That's always a hot topic. Maybe, maybe not. I personally think that there is, and there's a lot of reasons why I believe it's there. But is all the gold that the U.S. owns here? And clearly, some of it may have been in the Bank of England. And so right now, you're seeing just an incredible amount of gold finally hitting it. If you've tuned in to my X account that I just started a few weeks ago, you probably saw me start to talk about this really kind of early in the cycle, and now it's really getting picked up. Eventually, this is going to be on Wall Street Journal. So gold is coming to the United States, and jurisdiction is key. Why does that matter, though? Why do central banks? The central banks essentially control the money supply of most of the world. The Federal Reserve of the United States is a private bank. Not only does it manage the U.S., but they have essentially, that Fed bank is all linked up with a majority of the countries all around the world. It's essentially the same banking system. And I do know this, in times of crisis, and we haven't had really a major financial crisis in most people that are alive today, has not seen the U.S. dollar having an issue. The U.S. dollar has been strong. However, it's been so strong in the last few years that the other countries in the world that are based off of the U.S. system, who can't print their own currency, they're faced with really difficult inflationary scenarios. And I really think that other central banks and other governments, they value the U.S. debt and the U.S. dollar, for that means, it's really a three-prong approach. It's how many dollars are issued, how much debt do you carry, especially foreign debt, and then how much gold do you have? And so as you're balancing that, and if you think about it, the last number of years, dollars have skyrocketed, really. And you could imagine, I would say that the COVID bailouts and all that influx of capital really just shot the money supply up. And gold wasn't really paid attention to too much. But really, since that moment, you've seen the BRICS countries, with China kind of leading the charge. They have been adding gold to their balance sheets in record numbers. And I would say, if you just sit back and you kind of see, and Trump has talked about this, kind of put out a few things, even a few posts. I think he's done 2 of them that I've personally seen, kind of warning the BRICS to don't create another currency that would compete with the U.S. dollar, and don't back it. And back it with what? And I think it's pretty. I think we can look at this and say, why would someone back something with gold? Gold's been around for thousands of years, and regardless of whether we use it in our day-to-day life, it is essentially something that's kind of the backbone of finance, and has been for thousands of years. So I think what we're seeing right now in 2025 is the Western governments, and if we just look primarily, I think the U.S. government under the new administration is looking at gold in a different light than we have maybe in recent history. And they want the gold here. You've seen the new Treasury Secretary has talked about gold personally as being one of his largest holdings in an interview, I think back in November of 24. And now he's in control of the U.S. Treasury. So what could happen here is the United States repatriating a lot of gold? And are they looking to possibly also revalue their gold on their balance sheets? Most people don't know, on the balance sheets, gold is fixed at a price of $42 an ounce. Well, for those of you watching today, we're closer to 2,900. So essentially, the U.S. government, we call this mark to model. Their internal model has gold at 42, but the market is over 2,900. So if their balance sheets just get rehypothecated here, or reimagined at a higher price, right? There's a lot of added value. Now, I think anyone could look at that and say, well, that's already there inherently with a true market value. But they could also take that price and say they could peg it to a higher level. There's so many different scenarios, and I'm not the full expert by any means. But because I do work with so many different parties around the world, I see it happening. I see what's going on, the movement of gold, and I can tell you 100%, we've never seen anything like this. Jurisdiction matters. So a couple years ago, we've seen countries like Germany repatriate their gold out of England. They wanted their gold back, and it took them a few years to get it all. Then countries like Venezuela said, hey, we want our gold back, and it was held. And I believe it's somewhere in the world courts still. So I think people say, I want my assets in my jurisdiction. And then as we look at the United States, right, we also have states. And so right now there's a lot of gold that's being concentrated within New York. And I think that's going to bring up some other issues coming soon is do we have too much concentration on single sites from an insurance, from a risk management standpoint? And the answer would be is yes. So where's the world going? And so if you've got the BRICS countries adding gold quite vibrantly, and now possibly the United States as well, the United States has, for what's reported, they have the largest stockpile of gold in the world. I realize there could be other numbers out there, whether we believe them or not. The U.S. is the dominant player. So if the BRICS nations are trying to rise and grow their holdings, right? Is Donald Trump and his new administration, are they looking to make sure that no one surpasses the U.S.? That's totally possible. What's also been discussed is this decade going to see a great reset? And what does that mean? Obviously, some of the folks in Davos have a different opinion of what the world may look like. Regardless of what wins out, I think everyone could agree that our financial system's broken. And so there might be some sort of monetary reset or reconfiguration that's going to have to take place. And again, I don't have all the answers, but clearly I think we're seeing the biggest institutions in the world are making this as a high importance. Also here in the beginning of 25, 14 states have various bills, either about buying gold or adding it, reducing taxation on it. 14 states. We've already have states like Texas, they have their own depository, they own their own gold. Alaska has a lot of gold. New York, Ohio, they have a lot in their teachers' pension. And I think we're going to see more states who run, very large mega billion-dollar budgets. They're going to start adding gold too. So again, why would they? And I think during times of crisis, kind of going back to that balance of states cannot control the money supply, but they can control their debt, right? Their income through taxation. But they can also deleverage a little bit by holding assets that aren't attached to credit, and such as gold. So I think we're going to see a greater importance here. This theme is going to continue to grow. We also heard the announcement here in 2025 early is that the United States is going to start its own sovereign wealth fund. What's going to be in there? I mean, you're talking about they could hold assets like TikTok, this and possibly equity in other companies. This is a much different model than we've ever seen, and I'm not sure where I feel all about these things, but they also talked about monetizing the balance sheet for the U.S. government and for the people. I think you could see. Perhaps you've heard about Bitcoin reserve. We've heard about all kinds of possibilities. Well, what if this fund had a basket of different assets that it was using? I think this is really an answer to what's happening all throughout the world. Is these other nations have sovereign wealth funds, and a lot of those have gone around and bought up mineral reserves. So minerals you can think of them as some are monetary, gold, and sometimes even silver historically, and now we're seeing. And I can talk about this in a minute too. You're seeing silver even being discussed in Russia being added to its balance sheets. But minerals are also very strategic for military, for technology. These things are needed. And I think you're hearing big topics in the U.S. of why Canada Why Greenland? Why now? And there's a lot of different reasons, but I can tell you a big focus of that is minerals, and it's going to be needed for the AI movement. It's going to be needed for technology, and it's going to be huge for what's coming and what might end up being more of a two-world system as opposed to a globalism where we all trade together. So if countries like China just decide they don't want to share or sell certain assets, they control the production of these very high-tech things. So you can imagine the United States needs to secure its mineral resources, many of which are in the United States, but they're not all here. And obviously places like Canada and Greenland are quite strategic with rare earth minerals and other things. The other thing we're seeing is banks. A lot of the banks are now covering gold, and they're talking about it. I'd say, having been in the industry now for more than 20 years in the metal space, one way or another, banks kind of look at precious metals. It's boring. It's there. When they put out research reports, they sell those research reports, right, to their clients all over the world, or they just use it to drive business. So they're doing a lot of reports right now, and I can tell you why. It's because their clients are asking for it. And this is really more on the institutional side. A lot of these banks, their clients are central banks, they're federal governments, they're working with huge players. And if these people are paying more attention to it, they have to shine the light and do more research. So I think you're seeing banks like we've seen UBS, we've seen TD Bank, and just recently Citi put something out. And here we are, we've been, in the 26, 27, now 28, almost 2,900 now. They put out a report recently. It's going to go over 3,000, and they're even looking at the possibility of this thing being maybe 32, 33, 3,400 in 2025. While that doesn't sound like a lot on a percentage basis, I'll share from what I've witnessed through the years is the banks really don't take a very bullish case. A lot of times, wherever that price is, that's kind of where they say it's going to be for the year. They, 5% up, down. It's pretty benign. They don't want to come out. So the fact that all these reports are coming out tells you that they've got clients that are driving this, and this is definitely a focus of what people are looking at. So I think I take this as a pretty big indicator of where things are headed.